Let's start things off with a quick mental exercise, okay? I want you to think of a sudden, stressful event that happened to you today or, maybe yesterday. It really doesn't have to be anything massive. Maybe someone aggressively cut you off in traffic, or you spilled your coffee right before a huge meeting, or perhaps you just got an email that made your stomach completely drop. You got one? Okay. Now I want you to think about how exactly your brain reacted in the absolute split second after it occurred. Did you immediately panic? Did you just kind of brush it off? Did you instantly look for a distraction? Look, we all experience stress, right? But the way our minds automatically regulate those negative emotions in real time, that is actually one of the most defining factors of our overall mental health.
And the answers to why we react the way we do and how some people seem to have this literal superpower for handling stress, well, they actually lie in a truly fascinating piece of research. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a 2025 mini-review published in the Journal of Mood and Anxiety Disorders. This paper, which was put together by researchers from Washington University in St. Louis, examines this incredibly compelling connection between two things we usually think of as totally separate: having a sense of purpose in life and the underlying neurological strategies we use to regulate our emotions. And that brings us right to the core premise of our explainer today. See, we so often think of a sense of purpose as this grand, almost philosophical concept, right? Like it's a luxury reserved for people who just have everything in their life totally figured out. But what this new research suggests is that a sense of purpose is actually a highly functional biological shield against stress. It fundamentally rewires how your brain processes a bad day. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We are going to break down the anatomy of a stressful emotion piece by piece. We'll start with purpose as your emotional shield, then look at stopping stress before it starts, reframing the stressful moment, managing the emotional aftermath, and finally we'll look at the future of purpose. Starting right off with Section 1, Purpose, your emotional shield. We're going to bust a major myth here.
Because we really need to clear something up right out of the gate. Having a purpose absolutely doesn't just mean finding your ultimate dream job or, saving the world. Scientifically, it's defined as the perception one has direction in life that catalyzes greater life engagement. Notice the specific wording there. It's a perception of direction. It basically means you have goals that are future-oriented, and those goals actually get you off the couch and engage with the real world. So we're talking about a highly specific psychological state of forward momentum here, not just some vague, warm feeling of general happiness.
And the physical and mental benefits of this psychological state, they are just staggering. People with a stronger sense of purpose exhibit consistently lower perceived stress across completely different cultures. They have a significantly reduced likelihood of developing depression and anxiety symptoms. But it doesn't even stop at the mind, which is where this gets really wild. This paper points to objective, physical indicators. Purposeful people actually have higher daily pedometer counts. They even have stronger grip strength. Literally, stronger hands. This shows us that having a life direction translates into literal, physical health, and it fundamentally reduces our emotional reactivity to the world around us.
So how exactly does this invisible shield work? To understand this, the researchers used Gross's emotion regulation model. I want you to think of this as a super slow-motion camera for your brain. We're going to use these 5 stages to trace the lifespan of a single stressful event, literally frame by frame, to see exactly how a purposeful mind handles it differently than a mind without a clear direction.
Moving on to Section 2, Stopping Stress Before It Starts. Let's look at the very beginning of our emotional timeline. Stage 1 is situation selection. This is all about the proactive efforts we make to choose which situations we enter or avoid entirely to influence how we feel. The research shows that purposeful people subconsciously select activities that are personally important to them. For example, if you have a really clear direction in life, you're just way more likely to prioritize fulfilling family obligations or engaging in positive social interactions. By subconsciously selecting into these meaningful situations, you are effectively self-regulating. You're naturally limiting your exposure to random, unnecessary stress because you are entirely focused on what actually matters to your goals.
But hey, what if you just can't avoid a stressful situation? Well, that brings us to Stage 2, Situation Modification. This is when you actively try to alter your environment to improve your emotional well-being. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of purpose in action. The researchers highlight a study involving first-semester university students. When faced with the immense, totally overwhelming stress of college life, the students who had a higher sense of purpose were significantly more likely to actively try to just fix the problem. Because they have a goal in mind, they're highly motivated to change their environment and clear away obstacles, rather than just burying their heads in the sand and avoiding the stressor altogether.
Let's fast forward our slow motion camera right to the absolute peak of a stressful event in Section 3, reframing the stressful moment.
Stage 3 is attentional deployment. When you are right in the thick of a bad situation, what do you actually focus your attention on? The literature suggests this fascinating concept called the recentering hypothesis. Having a sense of purpose actually helps recenter your conscious attention toward the bigger picture. Think about it. When you can clearly see the overarching narrative of your life, everyday hiccups like that spilled coffee or a rude comment, they suddenly become so much less disruptive because your attention is deployed on a much grander scale.
And the physical proof for this is honestly incredible. Check out this fact from the study. When participants were shown images specifically designed to arouse negative emotions, those with a stronger sense of purpose actually exhibited a reduced eye blink response right after the images were shown. Literally, a reduced eye blink response. No way, right? This means they were physically better at refocusing their visual and mental attention away from the negative stimulus. So purpose isn't just a neat idea. It literally changes our physical, neurological reflexes to bad news.
Which leads directly into stage 4, cognitive change. This is heavily researched territory. Once you've focused your attention, how do you interpret what you're seeing? Cognitive change, or reappraisal, is how we mentally alter the actual emotional impact of a situation. And the research here consistently shows a very robust positive association between having a sense of purpose and effectively reappraising life's obstacles. So, the crucial point is, how does this actually look in practice compared to someone who is struggling without direction? Well, when faced with a barrier, purposeful reactions involve finding silver linings, putting things in perspective so you don't overreact, and actively navigating around those obstacles. It is a highly dynamic, problem-solving mindset. Maladaptive reactions, on the flip side, often involve emotional suppression or just getting entirely mentally stuck on the negative elements. Purpose fundamentally rewires your internal monologue during a crisis.
Now the peak is past, and we enter Section 4, Managing the Emotional Aftermath. This is the come down.
Stage 5 is response modulation. This is defined as the efforts to alter your experience after the emotion has fully developed. Let's be totally clear here. Having a purpose doesn't mean you never get sad or stressed. Obviously, you still do. We're all human. But the absolute key difference identified in this review is what purposeful people do in the immediate aftermath to regulate those feelings. The study outlines a really stark contrast in these aftermath behaviors. Unhealthy modulation often looks like suppressing your emotions or being motivated to overeat specifically to regulate how you feel. But individuals with a strong sense of purpose, they are far less likely to use suppression or emotional eating. Instead, their healthy modulation looks like exercising to relieve distress, actively trying to find humor in a terrible situation, or simply reminding themselves that the anxiety just won't last forever. They bounce back quicker purely because their coping mechanisms are inherently healthier. Having mapped out that whole chronological timeline, let's turn to our final section, the future of purpose. The researchers point toward a truly fascinating frontier in psychology known as emotion polyregulation. Basically, this is the concurrent or sequential use of multiple approaches to regulate emotions within a single episode. I want you to think of it as a secret, unlockable level of mental health. Truly resilient, purposeful people don't just rely on one single trick. They seamlessly combine situation selection, cognitive reappraisal, and healthy response modulation into one fluid, impenetrable defense system. Leading a purposeful life inherently implies using multiple categories of these strategies to stay on track. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the ultimate paradox embedded in this research. The paper explicitly notes that while having a purpose is the ultimate shield, exploring what makes one's life purposeful can actually be anxiety-producing. Yeah, you heard that right. Trying to find your life's direction can ironically cause the very stress it's supposed to cure. It is an incredibly vulnerable, difficult process to actually figure out what you want your life to mean. Which leaves us with this final, vital thought. Knowing that the search for purpose is inherently stressful, as you begin the search for your own life's direction, are you equipped with the emotional tools necessary to handle the journey? The absolute beauty of this research is that it shows us purpose and emotion regulation are a two-way street. Building better emotion regulation strategies today will actually equip you to navigate the real travails of finding your ultimate purpose tomorrow. So take a hard look at your own emotional timeline, identify where your strategies are working, and start building your shield.